that is the intellectual Oedipus complex, right? So let us see, I'm sure you read it, it's very condensed, right? I mean, Bion wrote a little, though he didn't write too much really about the intellectual Oedipus conflict, but a bit he did, a little more than the condensation there Landonu makes. But let us see what you think about that.
Sorry.
That's fine. And we may then compare very briefly Bion's version of the Oedipus conflict to Freud and Klein's, if we manage, which is quite different, isn't it? So let's just see what you recall, and I fill in then where's needed.
I thought it was really interesting, and it reminded me of something that Ferenczi, which is
don't worry.
Okay.
that the Ferenczi said something about how these early sexuality or sexual appearances in children in oral stages was not a normal thing, but something that would come up if there had been some inadequate response to the child's need for nurture and love. And I think that's what Bion's saying too, that what Klein had seen as all this sexuality happening in the early Oedipal, as she described it, he found that it was appropriate, it was present in schizophrenia, psychotic states, but not something that was there if there was a normal orality that was well satisfied in the child's life. So I thought that was important, and that in that regard then it takes him to think about the early Oedipal, not so much from a point of view of these early sexual drives, but from a point of view of how that affects thinking and development and distortion of thinking. And so I thought that was, I think that's what he means by it's an intellectual, well, I don't know if that's what he means about it being an intellectual Oedipal complex, but I guess he's saying that it's something about thinking and the way that gets into thinking, rather than the typical Oedipal sexual that Freud described, right?
All right, good.
Yeah, and then it's not envy towards.
Speak loud so she can hear you.
Then it's not envy towards the copulating couple, but it's curious. It's wanting to know. This is what is confusing. Is it wanting to understand the? Oh, okay, so it's not envy towards the creative couple. This is where it breaks down for me. But
Yeah, I think he's saying he's trading the person doing that. He's replacing the Oedipal complex, the Freudian Oedipal complex, where the son wants to, or the child wants to sleep with a person of the opposite sex and kill the other one, with a person who is arrogantly. Well, the thing, this is what is a little puzzling. Maybe it's puzzling where you got balked too. Is the arrogance of the person wanting to know. And so, but that's also leads to disaster, doesn't it? You know, with the instead of it's still a murderous impulse toward That's where I get a little fuzzy. But there, instead of killing the father and sleeping with the mother, there's an arrogant attitude toward trying to find out what is happening in the mind of the family, the mother and
How-
father.
How does how does that desire for curiosity, how can it be so great that it causes the infant to essentially commit psychic suicide?
Yeah.
I mean, I don't get the link. Really.
Uh-huh. All right. Any thoughts?
Well, the thing that came to mind, or the thing that was helpful to me, were the examples from the Oedipus myth,
Yes.
Yeah.
and I guess to me, the sort of psychic suicide, it wasn't the winning the Oedipal competition that made Oedipus destruct. It was knowing that he did, and I thought that, I don't know. To me, that seemed to be a distinction. It wasn't. It was knowing the truth, the search for the truth, and then knowing it that destroyed him.
He could
Not
bear
the
the
act
truth.
itself. Yeah.
As if the truth wouldn't hurt him, as if there was no danger in knowing.
Right.
So, I want to go back to the book, but
Yes. Yes. You may. Sure.
I,
Could you follow up to here, Julie?
Not very well. I wish, I'm really sorry.
No, that's
Um,
fine. Well, Sam was just saying that she found useful to look back at the myth and Bion's highlighting in the myth not the sexual crime as we know it, but
Right.
Oedipus's determination to get to know the truth no matter what,
Right.
and then feeling that he couldn't bear what his curiosity, his determination to know led him to know, right? And Claudette was adding that part of this arrogant determination was his denying that he could be hurt by the truth that he was trying to find out.
Right.
Which is part of the myth, isn't it? Tiresias in the myth, that was this blind soothsayer, warned Oedipus against this determination to get to know at no matter what cost. Tiresias did know that Oedipus had murdered his father. Oedipus didn't know. Oedipus was just determined to find out the truth. And Tiresias, who had known himself, here Blandonu is not laying out the whole story of the myth, but Tiresias, so one of the versions of the myth goes, had seen two serpents copulating and went blind as a consequence of having seen what he shouldn't have seen. Right? So Tiresias knew that curiosity can, in certain circumstances, lead to the opposite. You get to know something that you can't bear knowing, right? Like seeing your parents copulating, the snake stand probably for the parental couple, and then you are shocked by what you found out. Not that that's not true, but can you bear the truth? How much is it bearable or healthy for a little child to see the primal scene or to know the facts of life too soon?
and that's what creates the destruction of the capacity to think. That there's an overwhelm, not necessarily envy necessarily of the copulating couple, but just an overwhelm with the exposure.
Yes.
And then that destroys or hurts the infant's capacity, if they have an innate propensity towards early genital sexuality.
Yes, but not only towards sexuality, but to us curiosity, to us wanting to know.
To counter what? To counter what?
To counter their excessive determination to know at no matter what cost.
But what is that countering though?
Okay, what is the countering? What was it in Oedipus' myth? What had happened to Tiresias that then happened to Oedipus as well?
Oh, blinded.
Tiresias was blinded, and Oedipus had to blind himself after he knew that the murderer of his father was himself. Right? And Bion is taking their blindness as the countering of the curiosity. Later on, in Bion's epistemology, which I hope we will get to in the last meeting, will become minus K, the opposite of the link to know, an attempt to not know, which is not the same as ignoring, because ignorance is you don't know, you don't know. But minus K is the force that counters the ability to know, that counters curiosity. Lies, for instance. Do you want to open? Okay. Lies, for instance, are the opposite of truth, but a lie is not ignorance. He who lies knows the truth, and then he lies. You see, you wouldn't say that the infantile sexual theories of a little child are lies, because the child doesn't know any other, right? If the child thinks that mummies get pregnant because they eat some food that daddy gives them, that's not a lie. It's false, it's not real, but it's not a lie because the child can't lie about that. Who was that?
Gee, I forget her name, but she sat here the first day.
Joanne.
Joanne.
Oh, Joanne is
She's
coming up.
yeah,
Oh,
she's
good,
here.
good, all
I
right.
couldn't remember the code.
You see, so
Bion.
yeah, you wouldn't call that minus K, right? But if you know the truth and then you lie, or you lie to yourself, that is one of the versions of minus K. Going schizophrenic in Bion's model is the opposite of getting to know. You damage your psychic apparatus, you damage your apparatus of thinking related to the senses that inform you about what there is to get to know. This blindness, Oedipus inflicted this blindness on himself. He wasn't blinded, he blinded himself. And this blinding of himself stands for the damaging of the psychic apparatus by the ego. This is what I called last time, you remember, counter/intelligence, the intelligence against itself. Right? Now, what Bion does here, and we will see that also in 2 weeks from today, he uses myths in a very interesting way. He uses myth as patterns, or models, if you wish, as Freud did with the Oedipus myth, right? That help us understand some universals about the psychic apparatus or about the mind, if you wish, right?